Buddha called it the root of enlightenment. Seneca said it separates philosophers from fools. And Christ said to take up your cross daily. But we've been taught to avoid it completely. My name is Ryan Suave, and I'm a trauma and addiction therapist with over 10,000 hours of clinical experience. This video reveals what they all knew. Sitting with suffering isn't the problem. Avoiding it is. This is the missing piece. One of our biggest problems as human beings is that we confuse discomfort with threat, and then we respond to discomfort as if it's threat. In this way, if discomfort is threat, then relief would equal safety. And that's not always the case. Relief feels good, but that can become a trap because the moment that we're not feeling good, we're then seeking to feel good. And that's not what life is. Sometimes we're just going to feel bad. And we're taught escape, not endurance. Avoidance can look strong, but it collapses later. And what we know is if you can't sit with discomfort, it ends up driving your life. You end up seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. And this is hedonistic. Looking to have the things you want to happen more, and the things you don't want to happen less. And this is a life led by feeling. And feelings are not bad, they're just not facts. They don't tell us the truth. If we're just going to navigate life by feelings, we're not going to live a life that's intentional. If there was a ship in the olden days that was going to leave England and sail to New York, an old wooden ship, and the captain of that ship had done this trip hundreds of times, and he was one of the best sailors in the world. He knew navigation, he knew sailing, he knew his vessel. But this time on this trip, he said to himself, this is the way I'm going to travel. If the seas are calm and the weather's great, I must be going the right way. But if the weather's bad and the seas are rough, I must be going the wrong way and I'm going to turn. He might make it there if the seas are calm and the weather's great the whole way. But if it's not, he may never get to his port. He's going to turning north when it's coming from the south and turning south when it's coming from the north. And he may end up in a totally different city or totally different country. Or he may get to his destination, but it takes 4 times as long and the trip is taxing. What that sailor really needs to do is use his skills as a sailor and a navigator to, when the weather comes, to make a decision. Am I going to go through it or am I going to go around it? But still keeping his eye on the prize, which is his destination. Not unlike a GPS in a car, when you pull off the highway, it still holds the destination that you're going and will reroute you. Many of us live our lives like the sailor in the first scenario, that if I'm feeling good, I must be doing a great job, and if I'm feeling bad, I must not. And sometimes each one of those things is true, but more often than not, that's not the case. That sometimes we're doing the right thing and it doesn't feel comfortable. In fact, I would say almost always when going after a big goal, whether that's in relationships or work or in education, in going after something that's challenging, it's not going to feel great. We're not going to wake up every day just wanting to do it. And so the difference between the people who succeed and don't are the ones that are able to navigate that discomfort and keep their commitments. This same holds true with our emotional states. It's not the avoidance of pain or suffering that allows us to find peace. It's raising the capacity to be able to experience discomfort, to be able to build a distress tolerance. And as I say it, to learn how to feel bad. This is not a new problem. We see it in ancient wisdom from philosophers and religious practices. When we look at Buddhism, Buddha talked about the noble truths, and the first 3 noble truths were something like, all life is suffering. We suffer because of our desires. To eliminate suffering, eliminate our desires. That sounds maybe very simple, but let's break that down. He's saying that in life, we're going to suffer. It's part of it. In life, we're going to experience pain. That's part of it. We're going to suffer at times. But the suffering that we don't come out of or stay in for an extended period of time often doesn't come from the experience that is painful. It's coming from our desire not to be in that pain or our attachment to outcomes, that I want things to be a certain way. And if they don't happen that way, then I'm going to be in pain and I'm going to suffer and my life isn't great. The way out to eliminate our desires. And that doesn't mean don't have preferences in life. What it means is don't have attachment to a very specific outcome. If I look back at my life and the lives of those that I've worked with over the years, almost nothing happens exactly the way we plan it to. Sometimes it's better, sometimes it's not as great as we planned. But when we expand time, we do not have the ability to control the outcome of our lives. There is so much that's out of our control. And when we can surrender to that and let go of our attachment to it, then we can sit with discomfort and not suffer again and again and again. And we can move through life and find joy in it. One of the great Stoics, Seneca, said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." He went on to say that what separates philosophers from fools is that the philosophers train for discomfort. The Stoics practiced this. They would sleep on the floor. They would fast. They would go into cold exposure. They would live in poverty on purpose. They would lean into this discomfort so that they could find peace in any situation. And they taught us to rehearse it so that we can lean into it when it shows up, to practice for sailing in that bad weather so that when we're out sailing and the bad weather shows up, we're not shocked or unable to navigate the seas. And Christ said, "Take up your cross and follow me." And in Gethsemane, he showed us, sweating blood, begging for another way. Yet he stayed present in his discomfort, in that suffering, and chose his values over escape and said, "Thy will, not mine, be done." And Paul, one of Christ's followers, said, "Suffering produces perseverance. Perseverance produces character, and character, hope." He learned what Christ had modeled. The path through pain builds you. It doesn't destroy you. And all of these point to the same sequence, that suffering can bring about awareness, and awareness can bring about transformation. But only if you stop running, start leaning into it and taking action. Often action that's the most uncomfortable. If suffering can bring us to awareness, it's important to understand how that awareness can work for us. And even before that, it's important to understand what's happening, what's occurring when we're in reaction to life, when we're in suffering. Sometimes even these small triggers can make huge reactions. This is happening because we have a perception of what's happening now. If we're in a situation where there's not actual threat, I will say this all the time, that if there's actual threat, actual physical danger that is present now, or the potential for it, me, my family, or someone around us, we want to avoid that. We want to get out of it. We want to fight or flee. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about when there's a reaction to something that's not life or physically threatening, that may even be very small, but the reaction is very big. And we look at the reaction, we can kind of see that there is some perception that whatever happened is going to leave us not okay, that there is some potential threat. But that's a threat that we're perceiving. You know, when we go back to what Seneca said about in our imagination, what we're making up about what's happening, not necessarily what's actually happening. And in this way, the threat that we're reacting to is not what's in the present. That threat was in the past. And so we've got some sort of programming that says, I'm experiencing what's happening now in this way. Maybe it's a set of feelings or sensations in our body. And there's a part of our nervous system that's automatically determining that that's some sort of threat, and we're reacting to it as if it is so. And again, that works if there's an actual threat, but if it's not, it becomes an appropriate action, right? Appropriate to survive something, but at an inappropriate time. Inappropriate because there's not actually something to survive in that moment. When we have a survival level reaction to events that don't call for that level of reaction, things don't end up going well for us. It causes problems in relationships. It causes problems internally for how we view ourselves and the world and our place in it. It causes all sorts of challenges, brings up a level of stress that when experienced over a period of time can cause all kinds of problems in the physical body. But it's important to see that this threat isn't now, it's something that's remembered. And we don't want to beat ourselves up for having it. This served a purpose at some point, it's just not serving a purpose now. And oftentimes these reactions are happening unconsciously and automatically, but it takes awareness to understand, okay, I can look at this reaction and understand why I'm doing it. And like I've said before, understanding why I'm doing it isn't going to get you unstuck necessarily, but it is the key to opening the door into the transformation. We can't change what we're not aware of. These reactions made sense then, they just don't make sense now. And you're not crazy, you're just running on an outdated survival pattern. When we're not aware of the nature of a pattern is that it repeats itself. And people find themselves all the time saying, I'm going to act differently next time. And yet finding themselves back in the same situation or the same experience of a situation or the same reaction, almost pounding on the table going, how did I get here again? It can look like a grown adult having the reactions of a teenager or a child that's even younger, going from calm in one moment to completely disorganized and dysregulated in the next. And that's just history hijacking the present moment. And as we become aware of it, we can start understanding it, and then we can start putting tools and practices in place that can allow us to navigate them. This history coming up in these moments is like a wave coming up for that sailor, like a rogue wave hitting them out of nowhere. And in that moment, it might jar the vessel. The ship might roll to the right, but that sailor knows how to deal with a ship that rolls to the right. It doesn't mean that it's comfortable, but they know what to do with it. And when it's an emotional disturbance, what to do with it is not always finding a way to make it go away and to feel better. That's the trap. Because I'll go, as we talked about earlier, and say, well, I'm not feeling good about this, so I must have to change it. And so much of the time, that's not the case. It's really, we have to sit with it, to understand it, to be aware of it, so that we can move from reaction to response. When we're in reaction, there's almost not choice. And I'm not saying that people don't have accountability and responsibility for the actions they take. But when we look at our history of reactions, it can feel in that moment like there wasn't a choice, or it happened so fast and I didn't bring consciousness to it that it feels like it's just happening and overtaking me. And the solution to that, again, is not just to change it and get out of it. It's to learn how to sit in it, to slow down, to be able to make a decision rather than a reaction. I'm not a martial artist, but my kids are, and I watched martial arts in my life, and I know enough to know that they're not just teaching if somebody's coming at you to automatically run back at them and hit them. It may look like that's what somebody who's doing martial arts is doing. But in reality, most of it is about creating space, creating time and space for them to be able to quickly make a decision about what to do. Because if they just hit that person, they might miss another person coming from the other side, or the opportunity to do it without violence, that they can quickly create space. And that's what we want to do with our emotional reactions, to be able to create space between us and them so that we can look at them and make a choice, not be in reaction. Again, if we're in an actual survival response, an actually threatening situation, we want to react as fast as possible. We don't want to create that space. We want that part of our body to take over and get us to safety. But when it's this emotional disturbance, safety isn't always where I just feel good. Learn that we can be safe while we feel bad, so that we can make our choices for responses based on all of the options available and based on what our goals and what our values are, not just what our feelings are. And we can truly find lasting peace when we can build resilience, when we can experience the discomfort of life. This is not a saying I came up with. I heard a man who was a country singer say it, and he said he heard it from somebody else, but he said that peace is not finding calmer seas, it's building a better boat. That we're not just trying to stop the waves, we're trying to build the boat in a way that it can navigate the waves. And that's the same with us, our emotional experience of life, that we want to build ourselves to be able to experience it. And in building that capacity, there's freedom, because now we have much more of life available to us. Just like building a better boat, they've got much more of the sea available to them. So how do we interrupt this autopilot that we go on? Again, we do have choice, we do have accountability and responsibility, but when things are happening so fast, it's like we're on autopilot. How do we interrupt it? First, be aware that it's happening. Understand it. Get to know yourself, whether that's self-reflection, working with a therapist, working with a coach, or a peer support group, being able to become aware of when you go into that automatic reaction. And when you recognize that you're either going into that automatic reaction or you're already in it, finding a way to stop. A reactive tool to get you to stop, to pause. That could be calling a friend, could be moving a muscle, could be doing some breathing, whatever works for you. But finding a way to pause, Because when we're in that automatic reaction, we're not really in the present. We're kind of in the past, right? We talked about this. Our history is driving us. And so our reactions are going to be out of history, not out of presence. When we can pause, stop, then we can get present and look at what's actually happening right now. Somewhere inside of us, we've made a decision that this situation is not okay. It's threatening. It's not beneficial to us. And what we want to do is be able to move out of that automatic decision and take a look at it, get present to it. Because once we get present to it, then we have the ability to make choice. With that pause, we've created some space, and now we can really look at it and make a decision that's going to move us in the direction we want to go. We make a decision out of our values and our commitments, not our feelings and desires. And so this is how we shift over time out of reaction to authorship. We move from plagiarizing from our past into authoring our lives and writing the story of what's happening next. We're out of these cyclical patterns that don't move us forward, and we can truly choose what's next. And when we do this, we can move our past from being a prison into something that we can use and bring us joy. We can move our history from a liability that drives us automatically and unconsciously to an asset that informs us, and it becomes wisdom. There's something that comes out of the Alcoholics Anonymous literature that says, we don't regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. This is such a powerful statement. It's saying basically, in my interpretation anyway, that the past has happened. We can't change it. We can move it out of determining what our future is, and we can move it to a place where it's happened and I'm not going to regret it anymore and put that energy in the present on it. But I also don't want to shut the door on it because I can learn from it. I can use it. It can be the feedback that I get that says there are some changes to make in your life. Or when I face a new situation, knowing how I'm able to get out of it. Or sometimes knowing how not to get out of it again. Many years ago, I was sitting with a friend of mine who's a much older gentleman, very wise. And I was complaining about something that was going on in my life. And at that point, I'd done a lot of healing. My life was definitely transformed from where it had been a decade before. I was living a good life, but living a good life and having some complaints aren't always, mutually exclusive. I was finding a way to complain about something. And I was talking about the past and how I wished it could be different. And I was really talking about regret in some way. And I remember he stopped me and he just looked at me and said, Ryan, you can't use the wisdom you got until you stop bitching about how you got it. And boom, that hit me like a 2x4 across the head. I was just complaining about how I got it, and I wouldn't have had the life that I have now that I actually really love if I hadn't gone through all the stuff I went through. In fact, if it had been any different, I might have got hit by a bus walking across the street. Who knows? This is the life that I've had. I can't change it, but I can use it. There's another great saying I like that says every sinner has a future and every saint has a past. How we're living our life now and into the future isn't determined by our history. It's determined by what we do with our history and how we're perceiving it. Are we using it as something that we can be victim to? Or are we going to use it as great wisdom that can help somebody else? If this video gave you something that you could work with, please subscribe and even share it. I make videos that help people understand the nervous system and human behavior so they can take the next step forward. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next one.